Okay. There we go. One last comment, and then I'll say something for the video people. You need to realize I was raised on an island in the Caribbean,
Yeah.
5 minutes from a sandy beach, with really wonderful clear water of a just a slightly cooling temperature. And so I was a little spoiled.
That's for
Uh,
sure.
okay. Hello,
Okay.
everybody out there in video land. We are continuing with Joyce's Ulysses, and we have left the House of Ill Repute, and we are out on the streets with Leopold Bloom and Stephen Dedalus, and Stephen Dedalus is engaging in political conversation with a couple of British soldiers. And there we go. Let me get the chat up. Okay, I'm first. Off we go. Stephen throws up his hands. Oh, this is too monotonous. Nothing. He wants my money and my life, though want must be his master for some brutish empire of his. Money I haven't. He searches his pockets vaguely. Gave it to somebody. Private car. Who wants your bleeding money? Stephen tries to move off. Will someone tell me where I am least likely to meet these necessary evils? Ça se vaut aussi à Paris. Not that I, but by St. Patrick. The women's heads coalesce. Oh, Gummy Granny in Sugarloaf hat appears, seated on a toadstool, the death flower of the potato blight on her breast. Stephen. Ah, I know you, Grammar. Hamlet Revenge. The old sow that eats her farrow. Old Gummy Granny, rocking to and fro. Harold and Sweetheart, the King of Spain's daughter. Alana, strangers in my house. Bad manners to them. She keens with the banshee woe. Oh, Johnny, silk of the kine, she wails. You met with poor old Ireland, and how does she stand? Next, please.
Stephen, how do I stand you? The hat trick. Where's the third person of the Blessed Trinity? Sogarth Aroon, the Reverend Carrion Crow, Sissy Caffrey, shrill. Stop them from fighting. A rough. Our men retreated. Private Carr, tugging at his belt. I'll wring the neck of any fucker says a word against my fucking king. Bloom, terrified. You said nothing, not a word, a pure misunderstanding. Private Compton. Go it, Harry. Do him one in the eye. He's a pro Boer. Did I? When? Stephen says, did I? When? Bloom to the redcoats. We fought for you in South Africa, Irish missile troops. Isn't that history? Royal Dubliners Fusiliers, honored by our monarch. The Navy, staggering past. Oh, yes. Oh, God, yes. Oh, make the crower or boo. Casqued halberdiers in armor thrust forward appendants of gutted spear points. Major Tweedy, mustache like Turco the Terrible, in the bearskin cap with a hackle plume and accoutrement with epaulets, gilt chevrons, and the sabre tash. His breast bright with medals toes the line. He gives the pilgrim warriors sign of the Knights Templars. Major Tweedy growls gruffly. Rourke's drift, up guards and at him. Maha Shala Hasba. The citizen. Aaron Gobra. Major Tweedy and the citizen exhibit to each other medals, decorations, trophies of war, and wounds. Both salute with fierce hostility. Next, please.
So the next is Andy. And I think the
She
problem.
has to
is we
unmute.
skipped a- I
She
think
has to unmute.
did we skip a few lines? I don't know where we are.
I don't know where.
We went down towards the end of the page and then we went back up to the citizen Erin Gabra. So I
Must
think
be
if we
my
go down,
addition.
if
Is
we go
it?
down to Sissy Caffrey, we'd probably be okay.
Where they're going to fight for
Yeah.
me? Okay,
Yeah, I think that would be okay.
Okay.
okay. You got that in?
You're still muted, Anne.
Wasting my breath.
Okay.
So
Stay
where am I
stay
going
with
to
the
go?
program, Anne.
I know. It's too early for me. Okay. So will I go with the navvy, staggering past? Or will I go further? Private car,
Further-
private Compton,
Further
Sissy, Cunty, Kate.
Yeah, there.
Beg your
Yeah,
pardon?
that'll be fine. That'll be fine.
That'll
Okay,
be good.
Cunty Kate. Thank you. The brave and the fair. Biddy the clap. Methinks you sable knight will joust it with the best. Cunty Kate blushing deeply. Nah, madam. The Gould's doublet and Mary St. George for me. Stephen. The harlot's cry from street to street shall weave old Ireland's winding sheet. Private car loosening his belt shouts. I'll wring the neck of any fucking bastard says a word against my bleeding fucking king.
It's lovely
Who?
language.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect description. Shakes Sissy Caffrey's shoulders. Speak you. Are you struck dumb? You're the link between nations and generations. Speak, woman, sacred life giver. Sissy Caffrey. Alarmed, series private car sleeved. Oh, sorry. Alarmed, seizes private car sleeve. I'm die with you. I'm die your girl. Sissy's your girl. She cries. Please. Stephen. Ecstatically to Sissy Caffrey. White thy fables, red thy gown, and thy querulous dainty is. Voices, police, distant voices, Dublin's burning, on fire, on fire. Okay, we'll do a small bit. Brimstone fires spring up, dense clouds roll past, heavy Gatling guns boom, pandemonium, troops deploy, gallop of hooves, artillery, horse commands, bells clang, backers shout, drunkards bawls, whores screech, foghorns hoot, cries of valor, shrieks of dying, pikes clash and cuirasses, thieves rob the slain, birds of prey, winging from the sea, rising from marshlands, swooping from Aries, Hoover, screaming, gannets, cormorants, vultures, goshawks, climbing woodcocks, peregrines, merlins, black grouse, sea eagles, gulls, albatrosses, barnacle geese. The midnight sun is darkened. Next, please.
The earth trembles. The dead of Dublin from Prospect and Mount Jerome, in white sheepskin overcoats and black goat-filled cloaks, arise and appear to many. The chasm opens with a noiseless yawn. Tom Rochford, winner in an athlete's singlet and breeches, arrives at the head of the national hurdle handicap and leaps into the void. He is followed by a race of runners and leapers. In wild attitudes, they spring from the brink. Their bodies plunge. Factory lasses with fancy clothes toss red-hot Yorkshire barra bombs. Society ladies lift their skirts above their heads to protect themselves. Laughing witches in red cutty sarks ride through the air on broomsticks. Quaker Lister plasters blisters. It rains dragon's teeth. Armed heroes spring up from furrows. They exchange in amity the pass of Knights of the Red Cross and fight duels with cavalry sabres. Wolfe Tone against Henry Grattan, Smith O'Brien against Daniel O'Connell, Michael Davitt against Isaac Butt, Justin McCarthy against Parnell, Arthur Griffith against John Redmond, John O'Leary against Lear O'Johnny, Lord Edward Fitzgerald against Lord Gerald Fitzedward, the O'Donoghue of the Glens against the Glens of the O'Donoghue. On an eminence, the centre of the earth, rises the field altar of St. Barbara. Black candles rise from its gospel and epistle horns. From the high barbicans of the tower, two shafts of light fall on the smoke-palled altar stone. On the altar stone, Mrs. Mina Purefoy, goddess of unreason, lies naked, fettered, a chalice resting on her swollen belly. Father Malachi O'Flynn, in a long petticoat and reversed chasuble, his two left feet back to front, celebrates camp mass. The Reverend Mr. Hugh C. Haynes, Love M.A., in a plain cassock and mortarboard, his head and collar back to front, holds over the celebrant's head an open umbrella. Father Malachi O'Flynn, in Truibo ad altare diaboli, the Reverend Mr. Haynes' love, to the devil which hath made glad my young days. Father Malachi O'Flynn takes from the chalice and elevates a blood-dripping host. Corpus meum. The Reverend Mr. Haynes' love raises high behind the celebrant's petticoats, revealing his grey, bare, hairy buttocks, between which a carrot is stuck. My body. The voice of all the damned. Ependier, Penopimo, dog droll, et rough, Alleluia. From on high the voice of Adonai calls. Adonai. Doom. Next, please.
The voice of all the blessed. Alleluia, for the Lord God omnipotent reigneth. From on high, the voice of Adonai calls. Good! In strident discord, peasants and townsmen of orange and green factions sing Kick the Pope, and daily, daily sing to Mary. Private car with ferocious articulation. I'll do him in. So help me fucking Christ, I'll ring the bastard fucker's bleeding blasted fucking windpipe. The retriever, nosing on the fringe of the crowd, barks noisily. Bloom runs to Lidge. Can't you get him away? Lidge, he lacks dialectic, the universal language. Kitty, to Bloom. Get him away, you. He won't listen to me. He drags Kitty away. Stephen points. Exit Judas. Et laqueo se suspendit. Bloom runs to Stephen. Come along with me now before worse happens. Here's your stick. Stephen, stick? No, reason. This beast of pure reason. Old Gubby Granny thrusts a dagger towards Stephen's hand. Remove him, Akushla. At 8:35 a.m., you will be in heaven and Ireland will be free. She prays, oh, good God, take him. Sissy Caffrey, pulling private car. Come on, you're boozed. He's insulted me, but I forgive him. Shouting in his ear, I forgive him for insulting me. Bloom, over Stephen's shoulder. You go. You see he's incapable. Private car breaks loose. I'll insult him. He rushes towards Stephen, first fist outstretched, and strikes him in the face. Stephen totters, collapses, falls stunned. He lies prone, his face to the sky, his hat rolling to the wall. Bloom follows and picks it up. Major Tweety loudly, carbine bucket, ceasefire, salute. The retriever barking furiously, oot, 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 oot. Next.
The crowd, let him up. Don't strike him when he's down. Air, who? The soldier hit him. He's a professor. Is he hurted? Don't manhandle him. He's fainted. The retriever, nosing on the fridge of the crowd, barks noisily. A hag. What called the redcoat to strike the gentleman, and he under the influence? Let them go and fight the Boers. The bawd, listen to who's talking. Hasn't the soldier a right to go with his girl? He gave him the coward's blow. They grab at each other's hair, claw at each other and spit. The retriever barking, "Ruff, ruff, ruff." Bloom shoves them back loudly. Get back, stand back. Private Compton, tugging his comrade, here, bugger off, Harry. Here's the cops. Two rain-caped watch, tall, stand in the group. First watch, what's wrong here? Private Compton, we were with this lady, and he insulted us and assaulted my chum, the retriever barks. Who owns the bleeding tyke? Sissy Caffrey with expectation. Is he bleeding? A man rising from his knees. No, gone off. He'll come to all right. Bloom glances sharply at the man. Leave him to me. I can easily. Second watch. Who are you? Do you know him? Private Carr lurches towards the watch. He insulted my lady. Bloom angrily. You hit him without provocation. I'm a witness, constable. Take his regimental number. Second watch. I don't want your instructions in discharge of my duty. Private Compton pulling his comrade. Here, bugger off, Harry, or Bennett will have you in the lockup. Private Carr, staggering as he is pulled away. God fuck old Bennett. He's a white-arsed bugger. I don't give a shit for him. First watch, taking out his notebook. What's his name? Bloom, peering over the crowd. I just see a car there. If you give me a second, Sergeant. First watch, name and address. Corny Kelleher, weepers round his hat, a death wreath in his hand, appears among the bystanders. Sylvia.
Yes.
I find it. Bloom, quickly. Oh, the very man, he whispers. Simon Dedalus' son. Bit strong. Get those policemen to move those loafers back. Second watch. Night, Mr. Kelleher. Corny Kelleher to the watch with drooling eye. That's all right. I know him. Won a bit in the races. Gold Cup. Throwaway laughs. 20-1. Do you follow me? First watch turns to the crowd. Here. What are you all gaping at? Move on out of that. The crowd disperses slowly, muttering down the lane. Corny Kelleher. Leave it to me, Sergeant. Is this Sergeant? That'll be all right. Am I going back? Am I all right?
Yes. Yes, you're fine. You're fine.
Sorry, because I'm on Kindle and I can't.
You're fine.
That'll be all right. He laughs, shaking his head. We're all often as bad as ourselves. Aye, or worse. What? Eh? What? First watch laughs. I suppose so. Corny Kelleher nudges second watch. Come on, wipe your name off the slate. He louts, wagging his head. With me, turlurum, turlurum, turlurum. What, eh? Do you follow me? Second watch, genially. Ah, sure, we were too. Corny Kelleher winking. Boys will be boys. Time the car around here. Second watch. All right, Mr. Kelleher. Good night. Corny Kelleher. I'll see to that. Bloom shakes hands with the both of the watch in turn. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Mumples confidently. We don't want any scandal, you understand. Father is a well-known, highly respected citizen. Just a little wild oats. You understand? First watch. I understand, sir. Second watch. That's all right, sir. First watch. It was only a case of corporal injuries. I'd have to report it at the station. Bloom nods rapidly. Naturally, quite right. Only you're bound in duty. Second watch. It's our duty. Corny Kelleher. Good night, man. The watch saluting together. Night, gentlemen. They move off with heavy tread. Bloom blows. Providential you came on the scene. You have a car? Corny Kelleher laughs, pointing his thumb over his right shoulder to the car brought up against the scaffolding. Two commercials that were standing, Fizz and Janet's. Like Princess, Faith. One of them lost £2 in the race, down in his grief. And we're on for a go with the Jolly Girls. So I landed them up in Beacon's car and down to the night town. Bloom. I was just going home by Gardner Street when I happened to. Corny Kelleher laughs. Sure, they wanted me to join in with all the mutts.
No, by God, says I. Not for old stagers like me and yourself. He laughs again and leers with a lusty eye. Thanks be to God we have it in the house. What? Eh? Do you follow me? Next.
Bloom tries to laugh. Yeah, matter of fact, I was just visiting an old friend of mine there, Virag. You don't know him? Poor fellow, he's laid up for the past week. And we had liquor together, and I was just making my way home. The horse neighs. The horse. Oh, ho, 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 ho. Corny Kelleher. Sure, it was Behan, our Jarvey there, that told me after we left the two commercials in Mrs. Cohen's, and I told him to pull up and got off to sea. He laughs. Sober hearse driver's a specialty. Will I give him a lift home? Where does he hang out? Somewhere in Cabra? What? Bloom. No, in Sandy Cove, I believe, from what he had let drop. Stephen, prone, breathes to the stars. Coney Kelleher, a squint, drawls at the horse. Bloom and gloom looms down. Horny Kelleher scrapes his nape. Sandy Cove. He bends down and calls to Stephen. Eh? Calls again. Eh? He's covered with shavings anyhow. Take care they don't lift anything off him. Bloom. No. I have his money and his hat here and stick. Corny Kelleher. Ah, well, he'll get over that. No bones broken. Well, I'll shove along. He laughs. I've a rendezvous in the morning. Burying the dead. Safe home. The horse neighs. Home. Bloom. Good night. I'll just wait and take him along in a few. Corny Kelleher returns to the outside car and mounts it. The horse harness jingles. Corny Kelleher from the car standing. Night. Bloom. Night. The Jarvey chucks the reins and raises his whip encouragingly. The car and horse back slowly, awkwardly, and turn. Corny Kelleher on the sidecar sways his head to and fro in sign of mirth at Bloom's plight. The Jarvey joins in the mute pantomimic merriment, nodding from the farther seat. Bloom shakes his head in mute, mirthful reply. With thumb and palm, Corny Kelleher reassures that the two bobbies will allow the sleep to continue. For what else is to be done? With a slow nod, Bloom conveys his gratitude, as that is exactly what Stephen needs. The car jingles Touraloom, round the corner of this Touraloom lane. Corny Kelleher again reassuralooms with his hand. Bloom with his hand assuralooms Corny Kelleher that he is reassuraloomed too. Tinkling hooves and jinkling harness grow fainter with their touraloo-loo-loo-loo-lay. Bloom, holding in his hand Stephen's hat, festooned with shavings and ash plants, stands irresolute. Then he bends to him and shakes him by the shoulder. Next, please.
Bloom. Eh, ho, there's no answer. He bends again. Mr. Daedalus. There is no answer. The name, if you call, somnambulist. He bends again and, hesitating, brings his mouth near the face of the prostrate form. Stephen. There is no answer. He calls again. Stephen. Stephen frowns. Who? Black Panther, vampire. He sighs and stretches himself, then murmurs thickly with prolonged vowels. Who drive Fergus now and pierce wood's woven shade? He turns on his left side, sighing, doubling himself together. Bloom, poetry, well educated. Pity. He bends again and undoes the buttons of Stephen's waistcoat to breathe. He brushes the wood shavings from Stephen's clothes with light hand and fingers. 1 pound 7, not hurt anyhow. He listens. What? Stephen murmurs, shadows, the woods, white breast, dim sea. He stretches out his arms, sighs again, and curls his body. Bloom, holding the hat and ash plant, stands erect. A dog barks in the distance. Bloom tightens and loosens his grip on the ash plant. He looks down on Stephen's face and form. Bloom communes with the night. Face reminds me of his poor mother. In the shady wood, a deep white breast. Ferguson, I think I caught. A girl, some girl. Best thing could happen. Him, he murmurs. Swear what I will, always hail, ever conceal, never reveal any parts or arts or art, he murmurs. In the rough sands of the sea, the cable toes length from the shore where the tide ebbs and flows. Silent, thoughtful, alert, he stands on guard, his fingers at his lips in the attitude of a secret master. Against the dark wall, a figure appears slowly, a fairy boy of 11, a changeling, kidnapped, dressed in an Eton suit with glass shoes and little bronze helmet, holding a book in his hand. He reads from right to left, inaudibly, smiling and kissing the page. Bloom, wonderstruck, calls inaudibly, Rudy. Rudy gazes unseeing into Bloom's eyes and goes on reading, kissing, smiling. He has a delicate mauve face. On his suit he has diamond and ruby buttons. In his free left hand he holds a slim ivory cane with a violet bow knot. A white lambkin peeps out of his waistcoat pocket.
Very good. Let's give it just a few seconds separation here as we have completed the Circe section, and we are going into Eumaeus. So with that said, and whenever you're ready.
I start?
Yeah.
Preparatory to anything else, Mr. Bloom brushed off the greater bulk of the shavings and handed Stephen the hat and ash plant and bucked him up generally in orthodox Samaritan fashion, which he very badly needed. Stephen's mind was not exactly what you would call wandering, but a bit unsteady, and on his expressed desire for some beverage to drink, Mr. Bloom, in view of the hour it was, and there being no pumps of variety water available for their oblations, let alone drinking purposes, hit upon and explained by suggesting, off the reel, the property of the cabman's shelter, as it was called, hardly a stone throw away near Buttbridge, where they might hit upon some drinkables in the shape of a milk and soda or a mineral. But how to get there was the rub. For the nonce, it was rather nonplussed, but inasmuch as the duty plainly devolved upon him to take some measures on the subject, he pondered suitable ways and means, during which Stephen repeatedly yawned. So far as he could see, he was rather pale in the face, so it occurred to him as highly advisable to get a conveyance of some description which would answer in their then condition, both of them being Ed, particularly Stephen, almost assuming that there was such a thing to be found. Accordingly, after a few such preliminaries, as in spite of his having forgotten to take up his rather soap-suddy handkerchief after it had done yeoman service in the shavings line, brushing, they both walked together along Beaver Street, or more properly Lane, as far as the farriers and the distinctly fetid atmosphere of the livery stables at the corner of Montgomery Street, where they made tracks to the left, from hence debouching into Amiens Street, round by the corner of Dan Bergen's. But as he confidently anticipated, there was not a sign of a Jehu plying for hire anywhere to be seen, except a four-wheel probably engaged by some fellows inside on the spree, outside the North Star Hotel, and there was no symptom of it budging a quarter of an inch when Mr. Bloom, who was anything but a professional whistler, endeavoured to hail it by emitting a kind of a whistle, holding his arms arched over his head twice. Next, please.
It was a quandary, but bringing common sense to bear on it, evidently there was nothing for it but to put a good face on the matter and foot it, which they accordingly did. So, bevelling around by Mullet's and the Signal House, which they shortly reached, they proceeded perforce in the direction of Amiens Street Railway Terminus. Mr. Bloom, being handicapped by the circumstance that one of the back buttons of his trousers had, vary the time-honoured adage, gone the way of all buttons, though entering thoroughly into the spirit of the thing, he heroically made light of the mischance. So, as neither of them were particularly pressed for time, as it happened, and the temperature refreshing since it cleared up after the recent visitation of Jupiter Pluvius, they dandered along past by where the empty vehicle was waiting without a fare or a jarvey. As it so happened, a Dublin United Tramways Company sandstrawer happened to be returning the elder and recounted to his companion, apropos of the incident, his own truly miraculous escape some little while back. They passed the main entrance of the Great Northern Railway Station, starting point for Belfast, where of course all traffic was suspended at that late hour. And passing the black door of the morgue, a not very enticing locality, not to say gruesome to a degree, more especially at night, ultimately gained the Dock Tavern and in due course turned into Store Street, famous for its C Division police station. Between this point and the high, at present unlit, warehouses of Beresford Place, Stephen thought to think of Ibsen, associated with Baird's The Stonecutters. In his mind, somehow, in Talbot Place, first turning on the right, while the other, who was acting as his fidus Achates, inhaled with internal satisfaction the smell of James Rourke's City Bakery, situated quite close to where they were. A very palatable odour, indeed, of our daily bread, of all commodities of the public, the primary, and most indispensable. Bread, the staff of life. Ere your bread, oh tell me, where is fancy bread? At Rourke's the baker's, it is said. Next, please.
En route to his taciturn, and not to put too fine a point on it, not yet perfectly sober companion, Mr. Bloom, who at all events was in complete possession of his faculties, never more so, in fact, disgustingly sober, spoke a word of caution, the dangers of Nighttown, women of ill fame, and swell mobsmen, which, barely permissible once in a while, though not as a habitual practice, was of the nature of a regular death trap for young fellows of his age, particularly if they had acquired drinking habits under the influence of liquor, unless you knew a little jujitsu for every contingency, as even a fellow on the broad of his back could administer a nasty kick if you didn't look out. Highly providential was the appearance on the scene of Corny Kelleher, when Stephen was blissfully unconscious, but for that man in the gap turning up at the 11th hour, the finis might have been that he might have been a candidate for the accident ward, or failing that, the Bridewell and an appearance in the court next day before Mr. Tobias, or being the solicitor rather, Old Wall, he meant to say, or Mahoney, which simply spelt ruin for a chap who, when it got bruited about. The reason he mentioned the fact was that a lot of those policemen whom he cordially disliked were admittedly unscrupulous in the service of the Crown, and as Mr. Bloom put it, recalling a case or two in the A Division in Clanbrassil Street, prepared to swear a hole through a 10-gallon pot. Never on the spot when you wanted, but in quiet parts of the city, Pembroke Road, for example, the guardians of the law were well in evidence, the obvious reason being they were paid to protect the upper classes. Another thing he commented on was equipping soldiers with firearms or sidearms of any description liable to go off at any time, which was tantamount to inciting them against civilians should by any chance they fall out over anything. You frittered away your time, you very sensibly maintained, and health, and also character, besides which the squander manium of the thing, fast women of the demi-monde ran away with a lot of pounds, shillings, and pences into the bargain. And the greatest danger of all was who you got drunk with, though touching the much vexed question of stimulants, he relished a glass of choice old wine and season as both nourishing and blood-making, and possessing a period virtues, notably a good Burgundy, which he was a staunch believer in, still never beyond a certain point where he invariably drew the line, as it simply led to trouble all round, to say nothing of your being at the tender mercy of others practically. Next.
Most of all, he commented adversely on the desertion of Stephen by all his pump-hunting confrères but one, a most glaring piece of ratting on the part of his brother medicos under all the Circe. And that one was Judas, said Stephen, who up to then had said nothing whatsoever of any kind. Discussing these and kindred topics, they made a beeline across the back of the custom house and passed under the loop-line bridge, when a brazier of coke burning in front of a sentry box, or something like one, attracted their rather lagging footsteps. Stephen, of his own accord, stopped for no special reason to look at the heap of barren cobblestones, and by the light emanating from the brazier, he could just make out the darker figure of the corporation watchman inside the gloom of the sentry box. He began to remember that this had happened, or had been mentioned as having happened before, but it cost him no small effort before he remembered that he recognized in the sentry a quondam friend of his father's, Gumley. To avoid a meeting, he drew nearer to the pillars of the railway bridge. "Someone saluted you," Mr. Bloom said. A figure of middle height on the prow, evidently under the arches, saluted again, calling, "Night!" Stephen, of course, started rather dizzily and stopped to return the compliment. Mr. Bloom, actuated by motives of inherent delicacy, inasmuch as he always believed in minding his own business, moved off, but nevertheless remained on the qui vive with just a shade of anxiety, though not funkish in the least. Although unusual in the Dublin area, he knew that it was not by any means unknown for desperadoes who had next to nothing to live on to be about waylaying and generally terrorizing peaceable pedestrians by placing a pistol at their head in some secluded spot outside the city proper. Famished loiterers of the Thames embankment category, they might be hanging about there, or simply marauders ready to decamp with whatever boodle they could in one fell swoop at a moment's notice, your money or your life, leaving you there to point a moral gagged and garroted. Stephen, that is, when the accosting figure came to close quarters, though he was not in any over-sober state himself, recognized Corley's breath, redolent of rotten corn juice. Lord John Corley, some called him, and his genealogy came about in this wise. He was the eldest son of Inspector Corley of the G Division, lately deceased, who had married a certain Catherine Brophy, the daughter of a Louth farmer. His grandfather, Patrick Michael Corley of New Ross, had married the widow of a publican there, whose maiden name had been Catherine, also Talbot. Rumour had it, though not proved, that she descended from the house of the Lords Talbot de Malahide, in whose mansion, really and an unquestionably fine residence of its kind and well worth seeing, his mother or aunt or some relative had enjoyed the distinction of being in service in the wash kitchen. This, therefore, was the reason why the still comparatively young, though dissolute man who now addressed Stephen was spoken of by some with fatuous proclivities as Lord John Corley. Sylvia.
Taking Stephen on one side, he had the customary doleful ditty to tell. Not as much as a farthing to purchase a night's lodgings. His friends had all deserted him. Furthermore, he had arrived with Lenehan. and called him to Stephen a mean bloody swab with a sprinkling of a number of other uncalled for expressions. He was out of a job and implored of Stephen to tell him where in God's earth he could get something, anything at all, to do. No, it was the daughter of the mother in the wash kitchen that was a foster sister to the heir of the house, or else they were connected through the mother in some way. Both occurrences happening at the same time, if the whole thing wasn't a complete fabrication from start to finish. Anyway, it was all in. I wouldn't ask you, only pursued he on solemn oath, and God knows I'm in the rocks. There'll be a job tomorrow or the next day, Stephen told him, in the boys' school at Dalkey for a gentleman usher. Mr. Garadise, try it. You may mention my name. Oh, God, Corley replied. Sure, I couldn't teach in a school, man. I was never one of your bright ones, he added with half a laugh. I got stuck twice in junior at the Christian Brothers. I have no place to sleep myself, Stephen informed him. Corley, at the first go-off, was inclined to suspect it was something to do with Stephen being fired out of his digs for bringing in a bloody tart off the street. There was a doss house in Marlborough Street, Mrs. Maloney's, but it was only a tanner touch and full of undesirables. But McConaughey told you you'd get a decent enough do in the Brazen Head over in White Tavern Street, which was distinctly suggestive to the person addressed of Friar Bacon for a bob. He was starving too, though he hadn't said a word about it. Through this sort of thing went on every other night or near it. Still, Stephen's feelings got the better of him, and in a sense he knew that Corley's brand new rigmarole on a par with the others was hardly deserving of much credence. However, Hod ignarius malum miseris succurrere disco, etc., as the Latin poet remarks, especially as luck would have it, he got paid his screw after every middle of the month on the 16th, which is the date of the month, as a matter of fact, though a good bit of the wherewithal was demolished. But the cream of the joke was nothing would get it out of Curly's head that he was living in affluence and hadn't a thing to do but hand out the needful. Whereas he put his hand in his pocket and anyhow, not with the idea of finding any food there, but thinking that he might lend him anything up to a bob or so in lieu, so that he might endeavour at all events and get sufficient to eat. But the result was in the negative, for to his chagrin, he found his cash missing. A few broken biscuits was all the result of his investigation. He tried his hardest to recollect for a moment whether he had lost as well he might have, or left because in that constituency it was not a pleasant lookout. Very much the reverse, in fact. He was altogether too fagged out to institute a thorough search through, though he tried to recollect. About the biscuits, he dimly remembered. Who now exactly gave him, he wondered? Or where was it? Or did he buy? However, in another pocket he came across what he surmised in the dark were pennies. Erroneously, however, as it turned out. Those are half crowns, man, Corley corrected him. Next.
And so, in point of fact, they turned out to be. Stephen lent him one of them. Thanks, Corley answered. You're a gentleman. I'll pay you back some time. Who's that with you? I saw him a few times in the Bleeding Horse in Camden Street with Boylan the bill sticker. You might put in a good word for us to get me taken on there. I'll carry a sandwich board. Only the girl in the office told me I'd carry a sandwich board. Only the girl in the office told me they're full up for the next 3 weeks, man. God, you've no book ahead, man. You'd think it was for the Carl Rosa. I don't give a shite anyway, so long as I get a job, even as a crossing sweeper. Subsequently, being not quite so down in the mouth as the 2 and 6 he got, he informed Stephen about a fellow by the name of Baggs Comiskey that he said Stephen knew well out of Fulham's, the ship chandler's bookkeeper there. He used to be often round in Knights and Nigels, back with O'Mara, and a little chap with a stutter the name of Tig. Anyway, he was lagged the night before last and fined 10 bob for a drunk and disorderly, and refused to go along with the constable. Next, please.
There it is. Okay. Mr. Bloom, in the meanwhile, kept dodging about in the vicinity of the cobblestones near the brazier of coke in front of the corporation watchman's sentry box, who, evidently a glutton for work, it struck him, was having a quiet 40 winks for all intents and purposes on his own private account while Dublin slept. He threw an odd eye at the same time now and then Stephen's anything but immaculately attired interlocutor, as if he had seen that nobleman somewhere or other, though where he was not in a position to truthfully state, nor had he the remotest idea when. Being a level-headed individual who could give points to not a few in point of shrewd observation, he also remarked on his very dilapidated hat and slouchy wearing apparel, generally testifying to a chronic impecuniosity. Palpably, he was one of his hangers-on, but for the matter of that, it was merely a question of preying on his next-door neighbor all around in every deep, so to put it, a deeper depth. And for the matter of that, if the man in the street chanced to be in the dock himself, penal servitude, with or without the option of a fine, would be a very rara avis altogether. In any case, he had the consummate amount of cool assurance, intercepting people at that hour of the night or morning. Pretty thick, that was, certainly. The pair parted company, and Stephen rejoined Mr. Bloom, who, with his practiced eye, was not without perceiving that he had succumbed to the blandiloquence of the other parasite. Alluding to the encounter, he said laughingly, Stephen, that is, he is down in his luck. He asked me to ask you to ask somebody named Boylan, a bill sticker, to give him a job as a sandwich man. At this intelligence, in which you seemingly evinced little interest, Mr. Bloom gazed abstractedly for the space of a half a second or so in the direction of a bucket dredger, rejoicing in the far-famed name of Eblana, moored alongside Custom House Quay and quite possibly out of repair. Whereupon he observed evasively, everyone gets their own ration of luck, they say. Now you mention it, his face was familiar to me. But leaving that for the moment, how much did you part with, he queried, if I am not too inquisitive. Next, please.
Half a crown, Stephen responded. I dare say he needs it to sleep somewhere. Needs, Mr. Bloom ejaculated, professing not the least surprised at the intelligence. I can quite credit the assertion, and I guarantee he invariably does. Everyone according to his needs, and everyone according to his deeds. We're talking about things in general. Where, added he with a smile, will you sleep yourself? Walking to Sandy Cove is out of the question, and even supposing you did, and won't get in after what occurred at Western Row Station. Simply fag out there for nothing. I don't mean to presume to dictate to you in the slightest degree, but why did you leave your father's house? To seek misfortune, was Stephen's answer. I met your respected father on a recent occasion, Mr. Bloom diplomatically returned. Today, in fact, or to be strictly accurate, on yesterday. Where does he live at present? I gathered in the course of conversation that he had moved. I believe he's in Dublin somewhere, Stephen answered unconcernedly. Why? A gifted man, Mr. Bloom said of Mr. Dedalus Senior, in more respects than one, and a born raconteur if ever there was one. He takes great pride, quite legitimately, out of you. Right. You could go back, perhaps, he hazarded, still thinking of the very unpleasant scene at Western Row Terminus, when it was perfectly evident that the other two, Mulligan that is, and that English tourist friend of his, who eventually urged their third companion, were patiently trying, as if the whole Bally station belonged to them, to give Stephen the slip in the confusion. There was no response forthcoming to the suggestion, however, such as it was. Stephen's mind's eye had been too busily engaged in repicturing his family's heart the last time he saw it, with his sister Dilly sitting by the ingle, her hair hanging down, waiting for some weak Trinidad shell cocoa that was in the soot-coated kettle to be done so that she and he could drink it, with the oatmeal water for milk after the Friday herrings they'd eaten at 2 a penny, with an egg apiece for Maggie, Booty, and Katie. The cat, meanwhile, under the mangle, devouring a mess of eggshells and charred fish heads and bones on a square of brown paper in accordance with the third precept of the church to fast and abstain on the days commanded, it being 10:15, or if not, ember days, or something like that. Next, please.
Donna's.
Orla's here and we've lost Donna. Oh,
Yeah.
Donna
Okay.
said he has to leave.
Okay.
Okay. Then I'll pick up.
Yes, you'll pick
Yep.
up.
Ah,
And Orla, are you reading Wordsworth?
No, apologies. I didn't know about. I forgot about time difference.
That's okay.
I'm on
That's okay.
Penguin,
Ah,
Okay.
and that was the one that Donna had. So I thought if I show up, Donna
Oh,
will
dear.
know what.
yeah, and
And Donna
Donna
just left.
disappeared on us, but we just started Eumaeus and we're what, 5 or 6 pages into it. We just finished with the section where Stephen Dedalus met Corley, the down and out friend who bummed a little money off of Stephen.
I'm
So
probably going to have to sit it out and listen this time.
okay.
But thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
Okay.
No
Very
problem.
good.
Are you going to read, Jane?
Yes,
Perfect.
Okay.
I'll put you in.
thank
So
you.
will you read next time round, Orla? Or do you want to just leave it?
No, I'll sit it out, thanks, because it'll probably take
No
me the whole
problem.
time to find the page. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
Perfect.
Jane, what edition are you reading?
Well, random, which I don't think you have, but I have the nymph coily through parting fingers.
Oh, we're way beyond that. We're actually just got to Eumaeus.
Oh,
So
well,
we finished Circe. And
where
we
was
started
I?
I don't know.
I know. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're just past the part where Stephen Dedalus had the interaction with Corley, Lord Corley, the down and out street
Okay.
urchin. And
So put
And
me toward
Stephen
the
says why he left his father's house to seek misfortune.
Oh, all right. I'll find it. I see it. So I suspect it was some Corley at the first go off. Is that it?
Yeah.
and we finished that section.
Oh,
And we're on and on. Let's see. Okay, so we'll just continue reading.
yeah, I'll
And,
find it.
and if you find it, let me know.
Okay,
You will be coming after Sylvia.
thank you.
I put you up there, Jane.
Thank
There we
you.
go. Okay.
May I proceed?
You may proceed, Lois. So very sorry. that we
That's okay. No, Mr. Bloom repeated again. I wouldn't personally repose much trust in that boon companion of yours who contributes the humorous element, Dr. Mulligan, as a guide, philosopher, and friend if I were in your shoes. He knows which side his bread is buttered on, though in all probability he never realized what it is to be without regular meals. Of course, you didn't notice as much as I did, but it wouldn't occasion me the least surprise to learn that a pinch of tobacco or some narcotic was put in your drink for some ulterior object. He understood, however, from all he heard, that Dr. Mulligan was a versatile all-around man, by no means confined to medicine only, who was rapidly coming to the fore in his line, and if the report was verified, bade fair to enjoy a flourishing practice in the not too distant future as a Tony medical practitioner, drawing a handsome fee for his services, in addition to which professional status, his rescue of that man from certain drowning from artificial respiration and what they call first aid at Skerries, or Malahide was it? Was, he was bound to admit, an exceedingly plucky deed, which he could not too highly praise, so that frankly, he was utterly at a loss to fathom what earthly reason could be at the back of it, except he put it down to sheer cussedness or jealousy, pure and simple. Except it simply amounts to one thing, and he is what they call picking your brains, he ventured to throw out. The guarded glance of half solicitude, half curiosity, augmented by friendliness, which he gave at Stephen's at present morose expression of features, did not throw a flood of light, none at all, in fact, on the problem as to whether he had let himself be badly bamboozled, to judge by 2 or 3 low-spirited remarks he let drop, or the other way about, saw through the affair, and for some reason or other, best known to himself, allowed matters to more or less. Grinding poverty did have that effect, and he more than conjectured that, high educational abilities though he possessed, he experienced no little difficulty in making both ends meet. Adjacent to the public urinal, they perceived an ice cream car round which a group of presumably Italians in heated altercation were getting rid of voluble expressions in their vivacious language in a particularly animated way, there being some little differences between the parties. Puttana Madonna che ci dia I quattrini, o ragione, culo rotto, intendiamoci, mezzo sovrano più, dice lui, Piero, mezzo, farabutto, mortacci sui, ma ascolta, cinque la testa più, next.
Mr. Bloom and Stephen entered the cabman's shelter, an unpretentious wooden structure where, prior to then, he had rarely, if ever, been before. The former having previously whispered to the latter a few hints anent the keeper of it, said to be the once famous Skin the Goat Fitzharris, the Invincible, though he wouldn't vouch for the actual facts, which quite possibly there was not one visage of truth in. A few moments later saw our 2 noctambules safely seated in a discreet corner, only to be greeted by stares from the decidedly miscellaneous collection of waifs and strays and other nondescript specimens of the genus Homo, already there engaged in eating and drinking, diversified by conversation, for whom they seemingly formed an object of marked curiosity. Now, touching a cup of coffee, Mr. Bloom ventured to plausibly suggest, to break the ice, it occurs to me that you ought to sample something in the shape of solid food, say a roll of some description. Accordingly, his first act was, with characteristic sang-froid, to order these commodities quietly. A hoi polloi of jabbies or stevedores or whatever they were, after a cursory examination, turned their eyes, apparently dissatisfied, away. though one red-bearded bibulous individual, a portion of his hair was greyish, a sailor, probably, still stirred for some appreciable time before transferring his rapt attention to the floor. Mr. Bloom, availing himself of the right of free speech, he having just a bowing acquaintance with the language in dispute, though to be sure rather a quandary over Volio, remarked to his protege in an audible tone of voice apropos the battle royal in the street, which was still raging fast and furious, a beautiful language. I mean for singing purposes. Why do you not write your poetry in that language? Bella poetria. It is so melodious and full. Belladonna volio. Stephen, who was trying his dead best to yawn, if he could, suffering from dead lassitude, generally replied, to fill the ear of a cow elephant. They were haggling over money. Is that so? Mr. Bloom asked. Of course, he subjoined pensively at the inward reflection of there being more languages to start with than were absolutely necessary. It may be only the southern glamour that surrounds it. The keeper of the shelter in the middle of this tete-a-tete put a boiling, swimming cup of a choice concoction labelled coffee on the table, and a rather antediluvian specimen of a bun, or so it seemed, after which he beat a retreat to his counter. Mr. Bloom, determined to have a good square look at him later on, so as not to appear to, for which reason he encouraged Stephen to proceed with his eyes while he did the honours by surreptitiously pushing the cup of what was temporarily supposed to be called coffee gradually nearer to him. Sounds are impostures, Stephen said after a pause of some little time. Like names, Cicero, Podmo, Napoleon, Mr. Goodbody, Jesus, Mr. Doyle. Shakespeare's were as common as Murphy's. What's in a name? Yes, to be sure, Mr. Bloom unaffectedly concurred. Of course, our name was changed too, he added, pushing the so-called roll across. The red-bearded sailor, who had his weather eye on the newcomers, boarded Stephen, whom he had singled out for attention in particular, squarely by asking, "And what might your name be?" Sylvia.
Oh, just in a nick of time, Mr. Bloom touched his companion's foot, but Stephen, apparently disregarding the warm pressure from an unexpected quarter, answered, "Daedalus." The sailor stared at him heavily from a pair of drowsy, baggy eyes, rather bunged up from the excessive use of booze, preferably good old Hollands and water. "You know Simon Daedalus?" he asked at length. "I've heard of him," Stephen said. Bloom was all at sea for a moment, seeing the others evidently eavesdropping too. "He's Irish," the seaman bold affirmed, staring still in much the same way, nodding. "All Irish." "All Irish, all too Irish," Stephen rejoined. As for Bloom, he could neither make head nor tail of the whole business, and he was just asking himself what possible connection, when a sailor of his own accord turned to the other occupants of the shelter with the remark, "I've seen him shoot 2 eggs of 2 bottles at 50 yards over his shoulder, the left hand dead shot, though he was slightly hampered by an occasional stammer and his gestures being also clumsy. As it was still, he did his best to explain. Bottles out there, say, 50 yards measured, eggs on the bottles, cocks is gone over his shoulder, aims. turned his body half round, shut up the right eye completely, and then he screwed his features up some way sideways and glared out into the night with a non-prepossessing cast of countenance. Tom, he then shouted once. The entire audience waited, anticipating an additional detonation. There being still a further egg. Tom, he shouted twice. Egg two, evidently demolished, he nodded and winked, adding bloodthirstily, Buffalo Bill shoots to kill, never mystery, never will. Silence ensued till Mr. Bloom, for agreeableness' sake, just felt like asking him whether it was for marksmanship competition like the Bisley. Beg your pardon, the sailor said. Next.
Am I up or is Katrina? You're not reading.
No, you're up, and actually you can read a good long while if you like, because it's 12. We've been reading almost an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh,
So
I'm
we'll-
sorry. So I
Yeah.
forgot that you weren't
Yeah.
doing that. That's what happened. Okay, thank you. Long ago, Mr. Bloom pursued without flinching a hair's breadth. Why, the sailor replied, relaxing to a certain extent under the magic influence of diamond cut diamond, it might be a matter of 10 years. He toured the wide world with Hengler's Royal Circus. I've seen him do that in Stockholm. Curious coincidence, Mr. Bloom confided to Stephen unobtrusively. Murphy's my name, the sailor continued. W.B. Murphy of Carrigaloe. Know where that is? Queenstown Harbor, Stephen replied. That's right, the sailor said. Port Camden and Port Carlisle. That's where I hails from. My little woman's down there. She's waiting for me, I know, for England home and beauty. She's my own true wife I haven't seen for 7 years now, sailing about. Mr. Bloom could easily picture his advent on this scene, the homecoming to the mariner's roadside shieling after having diddled Davy Jones, a rainy night with a blind moon, across the world for a wife. Quite a number of stories there were on that particular Alice Ben Bolt topic, Enoch Arden and Rip Van Winkle. And does anybody hereabouts remember Keg O'Leary, a favorite and most trying declamation piece, by the way, of poor John Casey, and a bit of perfect poetry in its own small way. Never about the runaway wife coming back, however, much devoted to the absentee. The face at the window, judge of his astonishment when he finally did breast the tape and the awful truth dawned upon him anent his better half, wrecked in his affections. You little expected me, but I've come to stay and make a fresh start. There she sits, a grass widow, at the self-same fireside, believes me dead, rocked in the cradle of the deep. And there sits Uncle Chub or Tompkin, as the case might be, the publican of the Crown and Anchor, in shirt sleeves, eating rump steak and onions. No chair for father. Boo. The wind. Her brand new arrival is on her knee. Post-mortem child. With a high row and a randy row and my galloping, tearing tandio, bow to the inevitable. Grin and bear it. I remain, with much love, your broken-hearted husband, W.B. Murphy. The sailor, who scarcely seemed to be a Dublin resident, turned to one of the Jarvies with the request, You don't happen to have such a thing as a spare chaw about you, do you? The Jarvie addressed, as it happened, had not, but the keeper took a die of plug from his good jacket hanging on a nail, and the desired object was passed from hand to hand. Thank you, the sailor said. He deposited the quid in his gob, and chewing, and with some slow stammers, proceeded. We come up this morning, 11 o'clock, the three-master Rosevine from Bridgewater with bricks. I shipped to get over, paid off this afternoon. There's my discharge, see, W.B. Murphy, A.B.S. In confirmation of which statement, he extricated from an inside pocket and handed to his neighbors a not very clean-looking folded document. You must have seen a fair share of the world, the keeper remarked, leaning on the counter. Why, the sailor answered, upon reflection upon it, I've circumnavigated a bit since I first joined on. I was in the Red Sea, I was in China, and North America and South America. I seen icebergs plenty, growlers. I was in Stockholm and the Black Sea, the Dardanelles under Captain Dalton, the best bloody man that ever scuttled a ship. I seen Russia, Gospodi Pomolui, that's how the Russians praise. You seen queer sights, don't be talking, put in a Jarvie. Why, the sailor said, shifting his partially chewed plug, I seen queer things too, ups and downs. I seen a crocodile bite the fluke of an anchor, same as I chew that quid. He took out of his mouth the pulpy quid, and lodging it between his teeth, bit ferociously, come like that. And I seen man-eaters in Peru that eats corpses and the livers of horses. Look here they are. A friend of mine sent me. That's enough for me. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Oh.
Let's see. Let me collect page numbers here. Joe, you have something to say?
And Wordsworth 535. Is that
Wordsworth
Gabler,
is
Gabler 511.
Okay, okay. Give me a second. I'm a little slow. Where am I? Oh, right. Okay, Wordsworth. 535. Gabler and Bodley Head is, what is it, Lois?
511.
511. Okay. Other additions?
The Long Penguin is 721.
Penguin Long 721.
Short Penguin 546.
Oh, we
Oh,
have
no,
two.
1958 Penguin.
Well done.
Okay, did you say 546 for the short penguin there, Orla?
Yes, well, I think this is the one that Donna has as well.
Yes, that's actually, I was surprised to hear of a second short penguin, but that's good. Okay.
I
All right.
don't really know what mine is, Duncan, because I'm reading it on Kindle, so I don't know what.
Well, you have to Kindle. I use Kindle sometimes, and you do that with keywords.
Yeah. No,
You
I find it with Kick the Pope today. That was my keyword.
Okay.
Somebody, I think Anne gave me one, but I had found it on Kick the Pope. So.
Okay. All right. I really like way back in the beginning the social dance between Leopold Bloom and Corny Kelleher.
Oh, yes.
It really is kind of like a dance, kind of, and the way that Corny Kelleher talks to the night watchman, which I think is just really elegant. I mean, Corny Kelleher is the one with the power in the interaction, but he goes out of his way to make it seem like he's not really exercising power over the night watchman. It's quite elegant.
And the very convoluted genealogy and attempts at it, isn't it? I mean,
Oh, that was hilarious.
But it's real. But it's real. Maybe people don't do it anymore, but Irish people used to do that sort of thing, explain who relatives were.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it just reminded, yeah.
Really
Yeah,
funny.
we're talking about Corley, Corley's genealogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some really disgusting things in it about the cat and that family, the cat eating this fish heads and all under the table. And then this disgusting sailor chewing the chewing
Tobacco, yeah.
Do you know what? Do people still use chewing tobacco?
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Really?
There's a lot of that and there's a lot of chaw tobacco and snuff used in Texas.
Is there?
Yeah.
Mm, interesting.
Yeah.
Laughing. I don't. But snuff. Can you? I haven't seen. I only saw old ladies, with stuff. Do you still get it?
Snuff. Yeah. Well, my grandmother Ina, she was a snuff user. And when she was older, she would sit in her kind of lazy boy chair at nighttime, and she had this stick thing where she would somehow put the snuff on a stick and put it way up,
Oh.
and then she had a spit can next to her. So every once in a
It
while,
gets better and better.
every once in a while I was talking with her, she'd pick her can up and take the stick out and spit in the can and then carry on the conversation.
What is snuff? Does anybody know what it is?
Yeah, powdered tobacco.
And isn't it worse for you than smoking a cigarette, health-wise?
It is ruinous
Yeah,
for the gums.
yeah.
And
But it must.
yeah.
But you probably got lung cancer. Now it's cocaine. But did you see they were talking about narcotic? Remember we were mentioning that before about narcotics and spiking drinks.
Yeah, and they had the thing where Bloom is proposing that maybe that's what happened to Stephen. That Mulligan and Haynes may have doped up Stephen.
Yeah. Joe, what were you going to say? You haven't said anything. I'm waiting to hear what you want to say.
No, I'm just listening. It's like
You don't get off lightly, Joe.
Hilarious episode,
I couldn't. I just had to laugh. It was just so ridiculous.
Well, it's early hours of the morning stuff, isn't it?
And what's great is, because I used to live on the north side.
Yeah.
And so, you can see it. I mean, the city morgue is still there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And of the Great Northern, which is now Connolly Station.
Yeah.
And they wanted to do them. Then we must have gone up Talbot Street and around Store Street, and then came out at the Customs House.
Yeah, they seem to have done a longer walk than needed. There's some doubt as to where the cabman's shelter was. It was a timber structure, so there was no plans or planning permission. It was just put there, and
was it near Butt Bridge?
Oh yes, it's in the area of Butt Bridge, and but there seem to have been several at different times, but where it was in 1904, nobody's sure. And Peter, it's just a kind of little bit of Dublin humor that there's a plaque on one of the piers of Butt Bridge saying the site of, and that is the one place it definitely was not. The Dublin Corporation managed to put it on the wrong pier. But it doesn't matter where it was. But in 1904, and they're very small. This photographs of them, they were all over the place. They were all the cities of the UK. They were in London, and there's a very good example from 1904 in London.
But just because they were not, they mentioned Store Street.
Yes.
And then they mentioned the Customs House. So, and I was thinking it must have been there somewhere.
Yeah, the mentioned the warehouses which were demolished to build the bus station that's there now, Busaris.
Yes, yeah.
So it's like they went round what's now Busaurus, and then would have come out and walked down the quays towards the custom house. But it's a long way of getting to the bridge.
And then they confuse, then, I mean, I was just following it in my head. And then they would suddenly talk about Sandy Cove, which is a way
well, that's just the same. Well, that's where Stephen has to get back to Sandy Cove. It is a long walk or a long journey.
And remind me, Joe, where's the Bridewell? I couldn't think where it was, because he mentioned, the way the Store Street is a C division. I didn't realize. Police station.
Yeah, well, the Bridewell is the other side altogether. It's not there. So
no, I knew that, but it, just suddenly jumped and talked about.
Yeah, well, you'd end up in the Bridewell. I think the Bridewell is where they would be brought to be charged at night. I think something like that.
Yeah, and they still talk about going to the Bridewell.
Yeah, oh yeah. I was waiting for a bus in Georgia Street on whatever it is, Saturday, and I saw this massive police operation going on, lifting a police vehicle transporter, and they were lifting a camper van, which was loaded to stuff on the roof as well. They lifted up. They were obviously seizing it, and 2 motorcycles, more policemen than I could count, and a second squad car arrived. So we got 6 police vehicles there to remove this camper van. And then the offending person, who had very long hair and was accompanied by 2 policemen to a car, and he was carrying a guitar. And I'd say he was living rough in the countryside and had probably no tax, insurance, or anything to drive the thing, and he tried to drive it through the city and fell foul of the. So that there must have been no murders or bank robberies going on that they could do one guy with a guitar. But anyway, I saw him later, because when my bus came, I saw them going into the Bridewell. You see, so that's a long-winded way of sort of kind of covering it. I think they probably would have taken Stephen to the Bridewell had police arrived. That conversation. Corny is trying to hide that he's a police informer, but everyone knows.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can see that Bloom has taken a fatherly role, and there's a bit of humor in that.
Oh God!
He's now, in terms of the book, he's kind of a self-appointed father of Stephen for the next few hours. And the first thing he does is he gives out to him about his friends. I don't think you're mixing with the right people. Those guys, this is what fathers do.
Oh God!
And the next thing, then there's this vulgar Italian conversation going on, and the father says to the son, "You should write in Italian." The son actually speaks Italian, and the father doesn't. So you can see Stephen is suffering the hardship of having a father. This is what it's like to be a teenage son, that your father's a gas bag, and you're not allowed to open your mouth. So you're getting the humor is there. Then you say, I leave it to you to find.
And Bloom does a lot of that in this chapter.
He's
like I keep on imagining Stephen. He's kind of in a stupor,
will he ever stop?
Headache, and he's tired, and this old man is yammering
at him. A good job in a bank. I remember it all.
Yeah, it's. I keep on thinking that Stephen is kind of looking at Bloom and going, What a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But it's probably the first time that Bloom, because Bloom tried to be smart or funny, and he always got knocked back.
Yeah.
And so the first time he's kind of got a position.
Yeah. And of course he tells him to be careful with the sailor, and he just goes ahead and talks to him.
The sailor conversation's really mad, because it just reminded me of, the way the sailor was talking about knowing this man or whatever.
Yeah.
And so when I was young, which is a long time ago, and I was growing up and I was working in Derry, and we used to be going, you had to go through army checkpoints to go from the north to the south to Donegal. And one night we were with, a crowd of us in a car. And one of the guys, when he was passing through the army checkpoint, said, "Oh, hey, it's me cousin." And he started having this mock conversation with the soldier. And the soldier was totally confused. And we're all terrified. And then the soldier decided to go along with it, saying, "How's me cousin and how's me uncle?" And, pretending that he was his family.
Yeah.
So it reminded me of that.
Yeah. He's telling Stephen that his father traveled the world with Engler's circus.
And I know it was so ridiculous.
And Sylvia, how did you know he was pretending?
Oh, because I knew him. He was absolutely pissed. So he wouldn't have. He was called Desi, and he was absolutely pissed.
Okay.
There were a few funny stories like that, in the very early days, in the early 70s.
Oh.
I don't know about anybody else, but I was relieved to get onto a new chapter or new episode. Were you, Katrina? Yeah. You're not in your.
I loved the ending, the very end of that chapter, but I was also glad. Glad that we're through it now.
Yeah.
But the vision of Rudy always touches me.
Oh yes, of Rudy.
Yes, that part.
That's sad.
Oh, that's just really painful. Oh,
good.
So we have Corny Kelleher, and as Joe, as you pointed out, he was a police informant.
Oh, I didn't know
How do
that.
we know that? What's the basis?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how we know it, but we do know it.
In the what's the name of the episode? In one of the early episodes, it
was the Hades episode? So something about it there?
The policeman is going by his premises, and he has a conversation about a particular individual with Corny. And
yeah.
Which episode is that? It's.
I think it is
Wandering Rocks. Is it Wandering Rocks?
Yeah. No, it's the.
It's earlier than
is
that.
it the Lotus? When Bloom starts going.
Yeah, that's right. It's when Lotus Seed. I think you have it there.
One of those.
Yeah, but that's sort of that's the conversation. I like Corny. Corny is, he brings the dead. He ferries the dead around in the daytime and the living around at night.
That's yes.
They're still going.
And what did Blazes Boylan do?
Oh, he's the impresario, isn't he?
Is well.
Oh,
is
that's
there- is there only
Yeah.
one Boylan? Is there only
Oh, yeah,
one?
yeah,
It
yeah,
seems
yeah.
There's only one Boylan. So
Yeah,
the Boylan that was mentioned today is also the same Boylan.
yeah. He kind of calls him a bill
But he
sticker.
was
But
a
what he
bill-
does, he arranges music events,
I
and
was just going to say, yeah, he
A bill
promotes them,
sticker
doesn't he?
meaning putting
Sorry.
posters up for the
Put
Oh,
music.
posters.
oh, right.
yeah.
And that's why he was going to get a job, trying to get a job with
Yeah. Stephen asked him to Boylan to Bloom to ask Boylan, one of his pals, to give him work. So stretching Bloom's patience a little, I'd say.
But Bloom was really uncomfortable. You know, wasn't it nicely done that he was trying to be sort of
Yeah, he stares at the dredger.
so
But
yeah.
that's the sun again, you see. That's the way, so yeah, you be able to fix it. Realize what he's suggesting.
Yeah, well, of course, when Corley asked Stephen to suggest to Bloom, Stephen just does that as a pro forma. He's well aware that Corley is not interested in a job of any sort,
Yeah.
and that he'll be back out on the street the next night
Yeah.
trying to cage enough money for some drinks and
Yeah.
some place to stay.
Yeah, there's a bit of a social history about all the different places where you could stay. You know, doss houses and all sorts.
The Brazen Head.
Yeah, the Brazen Head, I was really shocked.
Yeah.
Isn't that the oldest? Is that one of the oldest pubs?
I think they lay claim to that, all right. I think they used to say that anyway, I think.
Well, there we go. The Doss House. So a Doss House is like a penny lodging sort of place.
Yeah.
And it would be very,
Yes.
it'd be very basic, I would think.
Yeah.
Well, it can be pretty basic.
Corley gave, cautioning him against the place. One of the places he'd recommend, he said, but it might be a bit,
Yeah, but I feel terrible when they talk about doss houses, because I get the bus home to where the morgue has been moved to, and the city morgue is now out in Drumcondra.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Is it?
it's been moved out to what was a police station. But the hotels around here, buses you get, and you meet people, and they've been wandering around town all day, and they're put up at night in a hotel around the corner or further up in Ballymun. And these are people with children who are homeless. And it costs them, I don't know, like €10 or something. It's not a penny doss house anymore. It's like €10. And it's really scary.
Yeah.
Because it could happen to anyone.
Yeah.
And you know the way they say we're all 3 weeks away from something like that happening.
Yes.
And so you know the way what would have seemed remarkable if you were reading a book like that 20 years ago is now yet again commonplace. So it's like we're back in some post-Victorian era.
Oh yeah, I mentioned, I think earlier, that in the city of Austin, they're going to be changing the housing regulations because the housing situation is so desperate and the homeless population is growing and the people on the edge of homelessness are growing. So what we call single family housing zoning is extremely strong in Austin historically. And the city planners want to make it so a single family plot can actually have 3 dwellings on it. Have the regular dwelling, and then they can have a granny unit in the back or a tiny house, whatever you want to call it. And then they can also have an RV which someone can live in. And this is like, there's going to be a big fight about this, but it's like, it has to happen. I mean, the housing situation is so desperate. But you know, in the Victorian times, and you probably do know this, that the penny thing, like in London, which they mentioned, that when you were really drunk and down and out, you went into places that had like ropes strung along, and you paid a penny or a pence or something like that, so you could hang on the ropes. You could put your arms over the ropes, and that's how you slept.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, if
Wow.
you go searching around, you can find these images. I mean, yeah, but I mean, London was horrible. London was a truly horrible place for the poor.
It certainly, in this part of the world, it has gone backwards.
Yeah.
And it has gone backwards through government policy.
Yeah, but they're the working poor, Joe.
The working
The people
poor.
on the bus when I'm
know.
coming home from work are people who work.
Yeah. I know. Well, that tells you an awful lot about social and economic policy. So I don't want to start talking politics, but we are being turned into a nation of renters and gig economy workers by design.
Yeah.
And it's a disgrace, because when this country was formed, we had no money. But the first thing the government did was to tackle housing conditions. We're now one of the wealthiest in the world, and the government can do nothing about it. So I tell you, people will not stand for it. Like the younger generation, it's all right for the likes of me, who's old enough to have lived in when the world was different here. But the idea that we've 10,000 people living on the streets in Dublin, you know, and that nobody is ashamed of it in the government. Their days are numbered.
But
we got the same problem.
they introduced that policy of, you know, social housing, you know, that was built. And that came from Maggie Thatcher, because I was working in London.
Oh, yeah.
And people were able to buy those houses, but they didn't replenish the housing stock.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened, you know, so that happened, what, nearly 40 years ago?
50 years ago. Yeah, right. Thatcher and Reagan.
That really made a huge, I mean, because I was campaigning for the Labour Party.
Oh, yeah.
And if you saw new doors and windows on those houses, I mean, I remember somebody saying to me, even our dog votes Tory. You know, they chased me with their dog because they were, I mean, but if they had replaced the housing stock, I mean,
that's well, I won't take the conversation further because
but I will say that in the United States, that what started happening is that they started using private companies to create and to run the social programs.
That's it. That's exactly
it. The push is still there. I mentioned earlier today, there's a big push in Texas where the governor and the Republican Party want to take public education, take the money out of public education, and they want to give up to $8,000 a year to families that want private schools. And they are not, as a sop, they're going to raise the salaries of public school teachers a little bit. But Texas is very much going that way. They think somehow the private industry can do it all. And the record does not show that they do a good job. It's as simple as that.
you know, my friend took in a homeless woman, you know, a woman who was going to be in the hostel. And she was telling, you know, I mean, and I happened to be staying as well, you know, at the time. She stayed for about 2 years with my friend. But she was saying that, you know, you go in, you get a hostel for the night, but you have to go out and you don't get the same hostel. You have to nearly reapply again.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, you
so
have,
it
you
was
have to leave
really,
at like 9 o'clock in the morning or
yeah,
earlier,
yeah,
and then you get to come back to see if there's a space at 3 or 4 in the afternoon.
yeah. But you can graduate then to somewhere where you can stay permanent, but it takes a long time to get into that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know about it just from that woman.
Yeah.
We have a new statistic today, very much today. Yesterday it was published in New York City. Over 100,000 students are homeless.
Wow.
Wow.
100,000. Don't know
Wow.
where they're going to spend the night.
Yeah. 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 And they're students. So they're
They're
trying to
kids.
study
I would say grammar school, high school.
grammar school. Yeah. And as Orla said, like working too, you know.
Oh yeah, their parents may
Working.
very well be working.
Yeah. A job
But-
no longer allows you to live properly.
Yeah, but a lot of stuff happened when we were bankrupt, and the vulture funds came in, and now the vulture funds just buy up blocks
Oh yeah.
of apartments. It's really,
Yeah.
really scary.
Yeah.
You know, we need to do something about that.
Yeah.
Well, people are very, very, I mean, it's amazing how much us, the public, are willing to put up with before we decide something really has to change.
Yeah.
It's like the lobster in the pot boiling water. A little bit and a little bit, and before you know it, the water's boiling.
Yeah.
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 I mean, I often wonder when we were a poor country, I'm talking about Southern Ireland, the Irish Republic, and we were a poor country in the 1930s, we were able to build big housing estates.
Yeah.
Why can't we do it now? You know, when we're allegedly among the wealthiest in the world.
Yeah. Mhm. That's
Yeah.
exactly it, Jim. Well, poor Mr. Corley, anyway, isn't, you know, I don't think he's working poor. I think he's just sort of, you know, he's never
Who,
going to have a
Joe?
job.
Who?
Corley, the guy in the book,
Corley.
you know,
in
Lord John, and
Eumaeus.
he's called
Stephen
Lord
Lindsay
John
money.
Corley, you know.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So,
Right, towards the beginning of Eumaeus, when Bloom and Stephen are walking, and then this fellow
Oh.
hails Stephen, and then there's this whole conversation about Corley, you know, doing the you know, pity poor me story, and do you have any money to help me through, and do you know where I can get a job, and all this sort of thing.
what's the name of the guy minded the stones? You know,
Oh, jeez.
the job at night,
He's fast asleep.
and he's sound asleep in the arms of Morpheus.
It's so funny.
Right. Well, both going through in Circe and in Eumaeus, there's a lot of this actually going on. I mean, even the guys gathered around the cab's shelter, and you know, the Italian vendors on the street. It's quite amazing that Joyce is giving real flesh and character to these people. So, okay. Well, it is.
It was excellent.
Words. Yeah. Now, let me remind everybody now, while you're all here, that
We're back to normal.
United didn't, well, not quite normal. I will
What
probably,
passes for normal?
time-wise, it'll be normal.
Okay.
That will be true. But I do know that here in the United States, when we do the time change, everybody's a little whacked out. It's like changes something psychologically, and it takes, sometimes a week or two to really adjust
Hey,
to waking up, and putting up with the sun going down at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But on the reputed time thing, there will be the same standard, 6 hours difference between for me, it's 6 hours. For the East Coast people, it's 5 hours. So all that'll be normal.
So 7 for Dublin or Ireland, and 8.
Eight.
Because
Eight for Italy.
8 for you until the 1st of December.
yeah,
Yeah, how long
Then
you
we'll
go-
have to
how
bring you
long
back.
in Italy?
I'm staying
Mhm.
until December.
Till December?
Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
month.
Right.
How the other
Yeah.
half live?
Look at you.
I'm just living as I live at home here.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the way when I go to countries, that's pretty much what I do too. I locate a good place to read. I locate a good place to walk. I locate a place to have a glass of beer every once in a while, and I need a place to either make coffee or buy coffee.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
So
not really a traveler myself. I'll go do a few things, but
Hmm.
it's more atmospheric for me.
yeah,
But that's great, Sylvia. I would like
Okay.
to be in Florence.
Enjoy.
it's
Yeah.
and raining. It's raining in Florence.
Oh,
There you go.
But
And
is
then-
the architecture inspiring you?
Oh yeah, I mean, Florence is like a museum. I see things every time, and I'm staying in a slightly different place this time.
Right.
Yeah, it's just, I just love
Gorgeous.
it.
That's lovely.
Love people.
Wonderful.
And are you in the Dante reading group with Duncan?
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
Oh, so you get Italian as well.
yeah. No, except that my
Um,
Italian is terrible. I had a taxi driver yesterday. He couldn't speak English. I have pigeon Italian, but I realized what he was trying to tell me. I was really pleased. I think he was trying to tell me it was a one way, and
Oh,
could
yeah.
I get off sooner? And so I was really pleased I was able to work that out. So I'm kind of managing
Good.
with words
That's
here.
great.
So
Okay, well, keep enjoying, and we will gather next week on Thursday at the so-called usual time, with the usual time differences between us. And we
And-
will continue on in Eumaeus.
so-called
and
normal.
and
Kind of
Exactly.
so-called normal, yes.
I've missed Stephen Hero. So what's your next book after that so I can get it in advance?
We haven't decided yet.
Oh, you haven't decided?
But we did.
Mhm.
We're doing the Yates, right?
Oh,
Yeah, we've talked about doing some shorter stuff.
Yeah.
But we've got I think 2 more weeks with Stephen
more.
Hero.
Yeah.
Mhm. And then there was some talk about perhaps doing as we approach holidays, doing the Dead, doing the Christmas dinner scene in Portrait of an Artist, doing an occasional Dubliner story, and
And
So in
Bill
terms of-
suggested, sorry, Ola, Bill suggested, I had to look for it, the Tables of the Law and the Adoration of
Tables
the
of-
Magi. They're both really, really short. They were by Yeats because it just came up last week when we were in our reading. Joyce had read it and referenced it. Do you remember that, Duncan?
yes, I do remember that, and I would say that we will
And
actually
you just get that online, Ola.
yeah.
Okay, great.
And you can
great.
buy it also for any price.
Yeah, I found it. I got it at Amazon. I got the Exiles also.
Did you?
Okay. Okay.
Ah.
Well, we'll probably, as they say, nail down a plan next week.
Because you're coming up to Christmas and things, it's probably better to have short stuff
Hmm.
until
Okay,
we
well-
get back to normal.
Okay,
you.
I'm clicking the big red button.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.